right, so the first one I want to talk to you about is a book called Ready Player One, and it is by Ernest Cline. And over here on the side, I put a picture of the poster from the movie because, yes, it's also a movie. And so I saw the movie first. I didn't know it was a book, and then I found out it was a book. The movie was excellent. Loved it. Usually it's not my thing, but it's really just a great storyline, great characters. Loved the movie. Very entertaining, and I didn't know if I wanted to read the book or not. But I saw the book when I went to McKay's in Nashville one day, and so I was like, you know what, I'm just going to read the book and compare them. Because usually, if you're a book lover, you know that you don't like movies with books because they just never do the books justice. Books are full of details and, all these different things, and then you get to a movie and they try to condense a 400 or 500 page book down into, a 90-minute movie. And so usually if you're a book lover, you don't like it when they make a movie because they leave things out. But this book and movie could not be more different. There are just very few things that come from the book into that movie, and I loved the book and I loved the movie, so I was actually really okay with it. I didn't think I would be, but I was super okay with it. Both are worth the read and the watch. And in this instance, usually I tell you read the book before you watch the movie, but they're just so different that it doesn't really matter. But the book and the movie, the plot is the same, but so the main character is a boy named Wade Watts, and Wade lives in a world in the year 2044, and so it's not that far away. Typically, we talk about dystopias way in the future, like thousands of years in the future, but he lives in the year 2044, and there's not been any catastrophe or anything. It's just the economy tanked so bad that everyone's just kind of poor. And so there was a man named James Halliday. He was obsessed with 1980s pop culture, and he was a video game creator. And so he created all these video games or whatever, but then he invented this world called the Oasis. And people enter this world using virtual reality. So, virtual reality is when you wear the goggle mask and you can see it over there in the movie poster, and you have the hand things, and you can it seems like you're actually in wherever you are. And we have those now, but in this movie book, people live there almost. People don't go out and enjoy the sunshine. They don't go out and meet real people. A lot of them don't really have jobs. They just live in this virtual reality world to escape reality. And in this world, you can go be in a video game. You can go be in a Call of Duty game. Or you can go hang out at the club with your friends, or you can go dancing, or you can go bowling. It's basically a world like our world, except video game and virtual reality. And you can be who you want to be. You can make yourself a supermodel. You can make yourself kind of a monster kind of person. You can make yourself an animal, whatever. You can make your avatar whatever you want it to be. And so Wade's in there a lot. He's a teenager. He's 17, 18. He's in there a lot too, but he's in there because his hero is James Halliday, the creator of the Oasis. And Halliday died a few years ago, a few years before in this book. And when he died, he hid 3 keys in the Oasis. And whoever finds all 3 keys, you have to complete the quest to find the keys. But he doesn't even tell you what the quests are. You just have to use details and stuff from his life. He gave 1 clue, and that was it to get you started. And so the first person who finds all 3 of these keys gets all his stock, all his money. They get the company. They get control of the Oasis, everything. And so Wade decides he is going to try to find these 3 keys. But part of the reason is because he loves Halliday and he's really poor and he would like, to have the money. But also because there's a company called IOI who sells all this virtual reality gear, and they want control of the Oasis. And Wade knows that that's not gonna work. Like, that's not gonna be a good idea. IOI will have too much power. They'll ruin the game for everyone, etc. So he has some friends in the Oasis. He's never met them in real life, but he ends up having to meet them and team up with them to try to find these keys to keep IOI from getting them. And so it's a really good book. It is dystopian, but it is just one. It's not a series. So if you don't like a series, this one might be a good one for you. And it has a movie, so it's always really fun to watch the movie at the end. So book number 1, Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. Alright guys, book number 2 is the Lunar Chronicles. You can see them over on the side. I have them here. They are by Marissa Meyer. And there are 4 books in this series with 2 novellas. And novellas are small stories based on a series or another book. But there are 2 novellas. If you really like it and you can read those 2. But the first one is called Cinder, and it is loosely based on the book or the story Cinderella. The character is and the story is, but when I say loosely, I mean very loose, very, very loose, hanging on by a thread. The second book is Scarlet. It is Little Red Riding Hood, but it's not your typical Little Red Riding Hood story. The fourth one is Cress, and it is Rapunzel. Again, not your Rapunzel story. And the fourth one is Winter, which is Snow White. There are parallels. You can definitely see, the same storyline, kind of, but it is not a man having to come save a woman. It's not a woman needing to be saved by a man. There are no animal sidekicks. There's no girls singing in pretty dresses in the woods, attracting animals to them. It's nothing like that. It's just a really great story. So, in this dystopian story, there's basically been like World War III, and a lot of countries have had to rebuild themselves. So the story starts out in New Beijing, China, and they've had to rebuild it, so it's New Beijing. And so Cinder is a cyborg, and a cyborg is a person who is half robot, half human. She was born a human to human parents, but she was in an accident when she was younger, and so to survive, to save her life, parts of her had to be replaced with robotic parts. So now she's a cyborg. And if you're a cyborg, you're a second-class citizen. You're dirty. Nobody wants to touch you. Nobody likes you. People look at you differently. So that's sort of her life. And she is a gifted mechanic. This kid, she's a girl. She's like 16, 17. She can make anything. She can fix anything. Great mechanic. And so she happens to meet the Prince of New Beijing. His name is Kai, Prince Kai, and he invites her to a ball at his castle. So now you're kind of starting to see where maybe that little Cinderella kind of plot kind of comes in. And she does have a stepmother, and she does have 2 stepsisters, like in Cinderella, but actually one of her and her stepsisters get along really well. They're friends. And so everyone in the land is invited to this ball. But obviously, Cinder can't go because she's a cyborg. But Prince Kai invites her to go. And so she's trying to find a way that she can go to this ball. And so she goes to the ball, and there's a different people called the Lunar people. They live on the moon, but they're humans. They're not like aliens or anything. They live on the moon. And they come to Earth because the queen of the Lunar people wants to marry Prince Kai. And so she's trying to get Prince Kai to marry her. And there's a plague that's spread. And so she tells Prince Kai she will give him all the antidotes he needs to cure all the people who have this plague if he will marry her. And so she's there at the ball, and Cinder's there, and the Lunar Queen sees Cinder, and something about Cinder just sort of sets her off, and it is like her mission to capture Cinder and kill her. And so Cinder has to sort of run and to save her life. And Prince Kai wants to get to the bottom of it as well. Cinder wants to get to the bottom of what's going on. Who is she really? Why did the Lunar Queen like feel that way about her? And so there's space travel. There is traveling to different countries. There's having to hide. There's having to run. There's trying to figure out what's going on. So it's a little bit of a mystery. And then throughout the series, like you meet all these different characters that for whatever reason with their plot line, they cross paths with Cinder and become very important to her. And this was one of those books, I bought it for the cover. When my daughter was in 2nd grade, I took her to the book fair at school and I saw it and I thought it was going to be just another Cinderella story, and it wasn't. It was not just another Cinderella story. It blew my mind. I loved it. Scarlet was out, so I went and bought Scarlet, but Cress and Winter had not been published yet, so I had to just wait patiently for them to come out. But again, boys, you would like this. Most boys would like this. Girls, you're gonna love it, and I just highly recommend this series. I'm actually probably gonna read it again pretty soon. All right, so third series is the Red Queen series by Victoria Aveyard. So I have a picture of all the books over there. The first one is called Red Queen. The second one is Glass Sword. The third one is King's Cage. And the fourth one is War Storm. So this series, another one, I read it right after the Lunar Chronicles because I love the Lunar Chronicles so much. I Googled, another way that I find books sometimes is I Googled series of books similar to Lunar Chronicles, and this one came up and I really loved it. Again, great story. It does have a female, one of the main characters is female, but again, it's very action packed, kind of like an action movie like Lunar Chronicles is. And it is so good. So in this dystopian story, the main character's name is Mare Barrow, and she lives in a dystopian world where like all the it's like all of, I don't exactly know the land, but it's like there's not one country anymore with one like president. It's like all these different guys have all these men have taken over and become king of different parts, different regions. And so, but no matter what region and how much they're fighting, there are two people. There are the Reds and the Silvers. Silvers have silver blood, and if you're a silver, you have a special power of some kind. You might can control lightning. You might can produce lightning. You might can control metals around you. So that means you could be walking through a junkyard and, you know, your powers could start pulling up metal. Or you could control wind or rain or fire or whatever, water. But you have these powers. And Reds don't have any powers. And they are the second-class citizens. They're the low class. And they work for Silvers. And so Mare is in part of a big family. They're poor. All Reds are poor. And they just live in a very harsh dictatorship type world. And so there is a big war going on between the different kingdoms. And so she's got a couple of brothers that are gone to war. And so she's at home. And she is supposed to be finding a job. Typically, the Reds have one thing that they're good at. And so she just can't seem to find her spot, like what she's supposed to be doing. And she gets into a little bit of trouble. And so she ends up going to be a maid in a Silver's palace. And the king and queen summer home that's close to where she lives, she goes to become a maid there. And so in this story, the prince needs to find a wife. And so the way that they find wives is sort of like a battle royale between female silvers, all the ones who have these powers. They have like this arena, and basically the silver women, they come in these pretty dresses and stuff, but they end up fighting in this pit or this arena for the prince's hand in marriage. So Mare is there, and she is serving all these highborn silvers that their daughters are, fighting for the prince's, the prince's hand in marriage. And during one of the fights, one of the girls starts going crazy a little bit, and it's starts sort of crumbling the box seats in the arena, and she crumbles one that Mare is in, and Mare starts to fall, and it's a very long fall, and Mare is like, yep, I'm gonna die, this is it. And then all of a sudden her powers are activated, and she realizes that she has powers. And Reds are not supposed to have powers, and if Reds find out they have powers, they could have powers, they might try to access them and not do what Silvers say anymore. Take over the Silvers, or at least take over their own freedom and their own lives. And so the Silver King and Queen decide that they are going to trick everyone into thinking that Mare is some long lost highborn silver, and they're just so lucky that they found her. And so she gets to live in the castle with them, and it's either she has to pretend to be a princess, and she is not a frou-frou princess little girl. She is definitely a tomboy who hates dresses and being girly and have manners and politeness and all that. She hates it, but it's either that or they're going to kill her. So she obviously chooses to try to live in this palace and try to make things right. And so there is betrayal. There is it's sort of a lot of psychology in it, trying to figure out why people act the way they act, and it's making alliances with people that she absolutely hated, but now it's necessary. Again, it's just this action-packed movie, and it's just so good, and I could not recommend it anymore. It's really hard to put down. All right, so book number 4. It's a 2-book series, so a little bit shorter. It is called Dread Nation by Justina Ireland, and I just read this book on Sunday. I started reading it Saturday night and finished it around Sunday afternoon, and I immediately ordered the second book, which is called Deathless Divide. This book was recommended to me by the people at Parnassus, so I bought it at Parnassus, and because it was dystopian, and so I got it, and I didn't read it, and I was looking for something to read Saturday, saw it, decided, oh, I haven't read that yet, and I read it, and it was great, so I immediately got the second book. This book is a little bit different when it comes to dystopian genre, because typically dystopian genres, they take place thousands of years from now, or this massive thing happens, but this book is historically accurate in so many ways. And so this dystopian era starts the day of the Battle of Gettysburg. And so it's very historically accurate for, the late 1800s. The plot twist, though, even though it is so historically accurate, is that it is the people who die in the Battle of Gettysburg, they rise up and become zombies, which in this book they're called shamblers. Now, at first I was like, I don't know how I feel about zombies, because I just was never into The Walking Dead or anything, but it's not like that. This book is not revolved around fighting zombies. That's sort of the background noise of the book. This book is about a girl named Jane McKean, and she is born to a white plantation owner. Her mama is a white plantation owner in the South, and her daddy is a major in the Civil War who is also white. And so she's mixed. And her mama doesn't really want anyone to know that she's her real daughter. Everyone thinks maybe she's just sort of favoriting Jane because she doesn't want bad things to come to her or to Jane because she's white and she has a mixed daughter. And so she kind of keeps it hidden, but she raises Jane in the house, and only a couple of the housemaids know that this is her real daughter. And so in this era, because of the Shamblers, the zombies, Black children and Native American children get sent to these very prestigious schools that train them to fight Shamblers. And so because slavery is abolished, so it's not like people can own them anymore, but Black people still do work for white people, just like history tells us. And so instead of her working on a farm or as a housemaid or something like that, they try to send these Black and Native American children to these prestigious schools to get a degree. Essentially, it's a degree in fighting these Shamblers, and then they will go on to work for wealthy white people, defending them from Shamblers. They'll stay with them at their house, they'll travel with them, they'll go to public appearances and stuff with them to make sure that they don't get attacked by Shamblers, because if you get bitten by a Shambler, you turn into one. And so she gets sent off to this school when she's 14 years old. And so she's the kind of girl, she's very headstrong. She does not let people bully her. She doesn't let people tell her that she can't do something. And she does not like it when people put her down because of her race and call her racial slurs and things like that. And so she's not hated by people. She's just one of those people who opens her mouth when she shouldn't. She doesn't know when to be quiet. And so she has a hard time making friends. She doesn't really trust a lot of people. And so she's at this school, she's training, and something happens one day, and she saves these wealthy white people from being attacked by Shamblers. And so she kind of gets put in the spotlight a little bit, and she doesn't really like it, but she kind of has to deal with it, and it's not what she thought it would be. And it kind of instead of it being like a proud moment, even though she's a Black girl in this era, she kind of gets a target put on her back, and she's always having to watch over her shoulder. At the same time, she hasn't received a letter from her mama in a year. And she's writing all the time, and she doesn't know why she hasn't heard from her mom. She's very afraid that her plantation that she grew up on has been overrun by Shamblers. And so she's kind of trying to deal with that. She's trying to figure out what's going on because of the spotlight she gets put in for saving those white people. She kind of starts picking up on some things she doesn't think seem right. And she's sort of investigating that, and she gets caught and sent away out west. And we know in the late 1800s, going out west was supposed to be a great thing. It was supposed to be the land of opportunity, but it wasn't really for Jane. And so, again, there is fighting the zombies in here. There's plenty of that, but it is background noise. And so she's trying to figure out what happened to her mom. She's trying to figure out what's going on with these little towns out west, what's going on back east, because it takes place in Baltimore. So she's trying to figure out what's going on there. She's having to make friends with people that she typically would not make friends with or have anything to do with. And it's just a very action-packed book, and it's very historically accurate. And I couldn't put it down, and I can't wait to start the second book today. All right, so fifth, we have the selection series. Boys, if you want to go ahead and fast forward to the next book, you might want to do that because this book is definitely for girls. Mostly for girls. Boys, you're probably not going to like it, but this is the selection series by Kira Cass. And it's a 4-book series. It is The Selection, The Elite, The One, and The Heir. So this book is dystopian. I know that in Mr. Campbell, Miss Berman's class, you have learned about hierarchies in the caste system, especially in India. And so this is very much like that. So these people, when they're born, they are put in a caste 1 through 7. The higher your caste, then the more well off you are. The lower the caste, the more poor and well off you and not well off you are. Just kind of like in India, you're put in a caste and you only have certain things that you can do. So maybe you're an artisan, maybe you're a musician, a politician, something like that. So America is this girl's name, and the prince is gonna get married, and he has to select a princess, but they have to go through the selection process. And so in this process, several girls from each level of the caste system are chosen to go to the palace. So it doesn't matter if you are a 2 or a 1, or if you're a 7. So many girls from each caste level get to go to the castle to try to become the princess. And America gets chosen. It's not what she would choose for herself. Again, she's just very headstrong. She doesn't really know what she wants to do with her life, but she is in love with a boy, and she doesn't want to leave him, and she just thinks going to become a princess is stupid. It's just not what she wants to do. She doesn't want to live her life with people watching her in these fancy dresses, stuff like that. So she is selected, and it's like her worst nightmare. It's just not what she wants to do. And she goes and she meets the prince, and she meets all these other girls. And of course, there are girls who she gets along with, and then there are girls who hate her because they just want out of their life that they're living now, and they want to be able to live in this palace with the prince and become a princess. And so she does kind of start getting close to the prince, and the palace is attacked, and so she is sort of on Prince Maxon's side because she wants him to be happy. She really does like him as a person, and she just wants him to be happy. And so just throughout the course of the book and the series, it's just sort of like a back and forth where she's not sure what she wants, but she wants to do the best thing for herself, for her family, for Prince Maxon. She wants to be happy. She wants everyone else to be happy. And so I do think, even though it's more of a girly kind of book, it's not love-packed. It's not like super duper mushy gushy romance type. It really is a struggle for her to sort of decide what she wants with her life. And just like in real life, things come around and you think that's not what you want, and then you decide maybe it wouldn't be that bad. Or you think you do want that, and you decide, okay, maybe I didn't want that. So I just love the real life struggle that she has. Of course, the caste system and competing for a prince's hand in marriage isn't very realistic, but I think that her emotions and her feelings and just the internal battle that she goes through are very realistic. And so I really did like this series. And if princesses and love stories and stuff like that, and just not that easy road are your thing, then I think that you're really gonna like this series. All right, so 6th suggestion. I don't have the books. I read them last year and got them from the library, and I just recently ordered them because I want to read them again. This is one of those books that the librarian suggested to me, and I was like, okay, cool, and I started reading them, and I flew through them. And sometimes I do that. Like, I know that I'm really bad about doing that because I just want to know what happens next and next and next and what happens at the end. And so I comprehend what I'm reading. Like, I can tell you what happens, but I know that if I read it again, like, I'm going to realize so many small details that I probably missed just because I was going through it so fast. It's a really bad reading habit that I have, and I'm trying to get better about that, but I can't help it just because I love the stories and I get so invested. So this is the Testing trilogy by Joelle Charbonneau. I don't know how to say her last name, but it's there on those books over on this side over here. If you have ever read or watched the movies for the Hunger Games, you were gonna love the Testing. I did love the Hunger Games back in the day. I read them probably 10 years ago, even before they became popular, and I just love the Testing. So in this series, it's dystopian. There's been like a nuclear war or something like that, and there are only certain spots in the United States that are viable to live in and to grow vegetables and things like that that aren't just completely wrecked by radiation and still not emitting radiation. And so the main character, Sia, she's one of the main characters. She lives in this small little village. It's one of the few places, it's a very small town. There's many of these little small towns, and some are bigger cities and stuff like that. But she lives in a pretty small town, and she goes to school, and she's like a senior in high school, basically. It's like their equivalent of like a senior in high school. And in this land, in this place that she lives, you don't just get to go to college. You can't just decide you want to go to college. You have to be recommended for college by your teacher, and there's like one teacher for kindergarten through high school, and then you have to be chosen to test to go to the university, and then you have to go through the testing. And so it's very important for you to be able to go to university so you can get a good job, not only for money, but so that you can make an impact and really do what you want to do. Because if you don't, then you're going to get stuck with a job that you hate, a job that's just a necessity, basically. And so Sia has a lot of siblings, older siblings, that have never been allowed to go because for some reason the teacher in their town would not submit any names to be chosen for the testing to potentially go to the university, and nobody knew why. But Sia's like senior year of high school, they get a new teacher, and he does submit several of the seniors' names. And so she graduates, and she finds out that her and a couple other people from her town their names were submitted, and they were actually chosen to do the testing to see if they can go to university. Sia's dad was in the testing, and so he has an important job. And so she started talking to him about it, but he doesn't remember anything about the testing, nothing. But he has really horrible nightmares. And so all he can really tell her is, don't trust anyone. That's just basically all he can tell her because he doesn't remember anything. He just knows that he still has nightmares. He doesn't know where these nightmares stem from, and that she should never trust anyone, not even the friends that she's grown up with that also get chosen for the testing. And so she sets off and she goes. Now, some of it is like a book test, but some of it's like a smarts test. It's very cutthroat because there are like a lot of people who get chosen to do the testing, but there are only a few who get chosen to actually go to university. So it's very cutthroat. Everyone wants to be able to be the one to go to the university. And so people are literally out for themselves. There are not very many alliances. You can't really trust people in an alliance. And so she doesn't trust anybody. She goes, and one of the things you have to do is they take you out somewhere and drop you, and you have to find your way back. And so it's just honestly like her figuring out how she can pass all these different tests, figuring out how she can survive, who can she trust, And she figures out some weird things are going on. She doesn't really understand it. And that's what happens in the first book. Now, obviously, we know she at least makes it through the testing because there's more to the story, which is one of the reasons I love a good series. And so throughout the other book, she's just trying to figure out like what is going on. Why are things secretive? Why do people lose their memory? What is really happening in their government, etc., etc. Again, it's just one of those books, those series that I just flew through because it was so good. I couldn't put it down. It's action packed. You just cannot wait to find out what's going to happen next and how Sia and Thomas and Will and all these other people are going to turn out and what's going to happen. What are they going to do? Highly recommend it, especially if you really like the Hunger Games because there are a lot of similarities there. Okay, so last one that I'm going to cover, I'm going to do a video on fantasy because I know a lot of you do like fantasy, but and this one I almost put it in fantasy and I decided not to because it is a lot dystopian, so it could go either way, but I chose more dystopian. So this is the Undertow series by Michael Buckley. And excuse my sticker. And it is a trilogy, and it's a little bit weird almost. But it was so good. It was really good. So if you do kind of like fantasy, you're really gonna like this. So the main character's name is Lyric, and she lives in like dystopian New York. And if you see on the front cover of this one, it's Coney Island. And Coney Island's a little island right outside of New York City. And it's got roller coasters and Ferris wheels and boardwalks and games. And it's just a fun place for people who live in New York to travel to. And just kind of have a fun day. And this is one of those books that I did choose, again, based on the cover. Because the cover was just very intriguing to me. And so I started reading it. So what happens in this book is Lyric is in this dystopian society where these people who lived in the ocean. So think like Aquaman almost. These people have come up from the ocean and they can't live in the ocean anymore. Like they're being run out of the ocean. But the people of New York are like, no way, you guys are weird, you're aliens. They're very prejudiced against them. And so basically they make a tent city on the beach, and you can kind of see that right there on the beach of Coney Island. And so the mayor eventually is like, okay, they're not going to go anywhere, and so we're going to try to integrate them into our society as much as possible. These people, I mean, they just have their own customs and traditions, and violence is just kind of one of them. So they're trying not to be as violent so they can, be acclimated into the society that they are now in. And so the Prince of the Alpha People, that's what they're called, the Prince of the Alpha People is going to start school. And they are just genetically big and strong and muscly. Girls, boys, doesn't matter. And so people are just terrified of them. And so on the first day, it's almost like what happened when Ruby Bridges started school for the first time. Barricades, police officers, people protesting. They just did not want them to go to school with their kids. So Lyric is asked to be the prince's, his name is Fathom, to be Prince Fathom's escort around school, to make sure that he finds his classes, to make sure he understands things, to keep people off of his back, to keep people from like bullying him, and also to hopefully be friends with him. And so he does not want to be violent towards other people. And so as she gets to know him, she really likes him. She really realizes that, they're no different than other people. Sure, they can breathe underwater and they are super strong, but they're really just people on the inside. And so she really starts liking these people. But then another group of sea people start to come up to to come to land, and it kind of starts a war. And so the alpha people and then the humans, they have to work together to try to keep these people at bay in the ocean, because if not, they're going to take over the world. And so this war happens, and Lyric kind of gets caught in the middle of it, and she thinks that Prince Fathom dies at the end of the first book. And so she has to go on the run, because she doesn't want to get caught by the police and thrown in jail or killed, because there are certain people who are getting caught and thrown in these like dungeons and used for testing. And so she doesn't want to be caught, and she knows people are after her. So she has to go on the run, and she's trying to go on the run to figure out who these people are, why they want her, and what the real deal is with these alpha people, and how can they figure out if the other people from the ocean are going to come back, or if they're gonna stay gone, or how can we defeat them. It's just, again, just kind of fast paced, a lot of action. It's a cool story because it's just got like a cool different kind of people in it, but it also kind of hits home because it's not like a race thing, but it is kind of like an ethnic thing where people just don't like someone else because they're different. And so I just really enjoyed the series. I highly suggest it to you guys. Alright guys, so I hope that you enjoyed the book reviews. I hope you see one that you like. If you've been looking for a book, or your parents just really wanting you to read, which I hope that they are, maybe these are some suggestions that you can get. So I know that you've probably heard Miss Dark talk about the Libby app before, but here it is. It's Libby, and it is a free app that you can get in your apps on your tablet or your phone. If you look at my pointer down here, then you will see the icon that you should look for when you're searching for it in the App Store. So that's a good place to go because you can check out a book and read it, like on a tablet or a Kindle or even your phone, or you can listen to an audio version of a book. But just like a real library, even a digital library like this one online only has so many books that they can release to you, because they have to buy the permission to release them from companies, and they have to purchase that. So there's only so many. So if you do find that you are trying to check out a book, an audio, or an actual text, and you're being put on a waiting list and you want to just buy it, then here's some suggestions. So one of my favorite places to go is www.thriftbooks.com. I have a ton of books at home. I like to read an actual book more so than on a tablet, but we'll talk more about that when I do my reading habits video. But this is a good place where people who have books and they just don't want them on their shelves anymore go to sell their books. And so you can typically get them for $2 or $3, $4 or $5 maybe, depending on if you get hardback or paperback. But it's just a good place. They have just about everything you can think of, and they're at really good prices, and shipping is usually pretty fast. Also, a good place to go to buy used books that are in good condition for less is eBay. So that's always a good place to go. Or if you have Amazon Prime, that's a good place to go. You get pretty quick shipping, and sometimes you can find used books on there, but I have found that on Amazon sometimes the books are a little bit more expensive. And then the last place, and I cannot promise that they're still doing this, but I know when isolation first started or quarantine first started, that Parnassus in Green Hills was doing where you could call and ask for a book, pay for it, and they would like sit it outside for you when you got there so that you could get it. I don't 100% know, but if you just want to go get it like today or tomorrow and you don't want to have to wait for it, you might could call Parnassus and see if they are still doing that. So I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know if you start reading. let me know which one. You can email me. You can text me. You can drop a comment in the comment section below. And stay reading.